Okay, this is our first programming lesson. To get started, we're going to try to make a player that gets moved around the screen by the joystick. So to start, and you should start every program like this, we'll make the main functions that Pico 8 uses. The first one is init, so we'll call it function underscore init, and then an opening bracket and a close bracket. And then 2 lines away we go end, and this is what a function looks like, and there's going to be stuff in there later. Let's set up the next main function. That one's going to be update, same way. And the last standard Pico 8 function is draw. These have to be in all Pico 8 functions. So init runs as soon as the cartridge starts, so all the code that goes in here is all the stuff you want to happen right away. Update is all the stuff you want to have happening over and over again as the game works. This is like the main engine that runs all the things in the game. And draw is where we take the opportunity to draw things to the screen, like our characters or our score or our background or things like that. So to make a player that we can move around the screen, we need to keep track of the coordinates of the player. So coordinates are up in the top left corner. It's 0x and 0y. And what that means is that the player, as he moves around, is going to have an X position and a Y position. So if the player has an X value of 0 and a Y value of 0, that means they're up here in the left corner. If the player has a X value of 10, that means he's moved 10 pixels to the right, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So where my mouse is now is where the enemy would be, or the player would be. And if his Y value gets higher, he'll move down. If his Y value gets lower, he'll move up. If his X value gets higher, he'll move right. If his X value gets lower, he'll move left. So we have to make sure that there's a variable available for the player. We're just going to give it a name. We're just going to call it player X for now. When we make other games, we're going to change that. We're going to say it's 0, and we're going to say player Y also equals 0. So that is the X and Y of the player. Now, on the update, we have to see about moving the character around. So we know that every time the program is running, it's going to call the update function over and over and over and over again constantly. So while it's doing this function over and over again, we can check for whether a button is pressed or not. So let's do the line of code that'll read whether or not a joystick button is down. So we go if btn for button, and we know it's a command because it turned green, and each of the buttons has a number. So I think left is 0. So if button 0, that means we're asking what will happen if button 0 gets pressed. So if button 0 is pressed, then, and then we put another line, we'll put end there, and then we'll put the thing that's supposed to happen when left is pressed. So we know that the player X value gets higher when he's going right and lower when he's going left. So what we need to do is subtract from the player X value every time left is pressed. So let's say if button 0 is pressed, which is left, player X negative equals 1, which means it's going to subtract 1 every time. And now I'm going to copy all of that. Actually, I'll type it fresh so we can watch. So button 0, or button 1 in this case, is the opposite direction. And now this is for going right, so player X will equal plus equal 1. So it'll go up by 1 instead of down by 1. So we've got 2 more buttons to do if we're going to do directions. So let's make sure I got these right. So left, right, up, down, I believe it is. So this will be player Y equals plus equals 1. or that's up, so it's going to be negative equals 1. And then it's going to be if the last one is 4 directions, but we end at 3 because we start at 0. Player y plus equals 1. End. Okay. Now, that's going to change the player x and y, but we can't see anything happen because we're not drawing anything to the screen. So let's just run this code to see if there's any errors in it. No errors, looks good, but we can't tell. Nothing is happening. I can press buttons all day. We can't see anything yet. So I'll press escape, and I'm going to go back into my code editor. Let's have a look at the draw command. So we should draw a sprite at the location. So we haven't made one yet, so let's go to our sprite editor and draw one. Let's quickly draw a little dude. Okay, so that's Sprite Index 1. This is Sprite Index 0. It starts out as a little x. We leave that 1 because the x usually means transparent tile, and that's a thing we'll use for level editing later. For now, we're just going to make this simple guy here. And let's have a look. Okay, so now the draw function is going to get called every time it's time to put stuff on the screen. So we are going to draw our little guy there with this command, spr for sprite. And this command takes the sprite index, which we can check like this. So if I highlight them, I can tell right here that this is index 1. So if I type any new index, if I click them, I'll see the index number right here. So this guy is 1. So that means if we draw sprite 1 at a certain location on the screen, let's try drawing him at 100, 100. Run it again. So now he's down there at 100, 100. That's the location he's at. Let's try it with our variables. Player x, player y. Now I can move him around. But he's making crazy trails. How do we stop that? We need to clear all the pixels off of the screen every frame if we don't want him to make these crazy trails. So let's press escape, and let's add a command to clear all the pixels to black at the beginning of the draw call. It'll clear the whole screen with this command, cls, for clear screen. So every frame, everything will get erased, but before we know anything has happened, it's going to draw our character. So let's try it now. There we go. So we can't tell the screen is being erased every time. We have no idea. He can go off the screen to the right. He's got no boundaries. He can go up. So this is a good start. This is a good start for us being able to make a game. So you try that. Now, we'll come back again and we'll try some more advanced stuff next. But let's go over all of this. So in the init function, we've got a function that defines everything that needs to start out. Even though it equals 0, we have to type it in there. Because if we delete it, our program won't run. It's going to complain about a nil value, which means it doesn't know about player y. So player y wasn't initialized, and here it is, player y is being talked about in other functions. So that crashes the Pico. That's no good. So we need to have those in there. Player x equals, and we can start off at a different value too. If we want to start them in the middle of the screen, we can say we'll start at player x equals 64 and player y equals 64. Since the screen is 128 pixels across and 128 pixels up and down, that means halfway is 64. So if it's halfway in both directions, he should be right in the middle. So let's run that again, and he starts off in the middle. Cool. That is our very cheap game so far, and step by step, we're going to make something really cool.